All right. Well, good evening, Mount Vernon. Glad to be able to speak with you guys this evening. There's been a lot going on in our community and in our nation, and it's time for some updates. So tonight I'm going to talk to you about a couple of things, including the budget, and give you some updates on that, where we are relative to graduation, the status of the ballots. I've been getting some questions about that. And just give you some general updates. But first and foremost, I want to say that I sent a message out to staff this week regarding what's going on around our nation, regarding the George Floyd matter. And I have to say, like the rest of the country, the rest of the world, actually, it's quite disturbing. It is appalling. I think that we have to remind our children that there are occasions when civil disobedience is just, but we also need to remind them that there is an appropriate manner in which you protest and express your objection, and violence and destruction of property is not the answer. While I can appreciate why protesters have reached that degree of frustration, it is not the kind of message that we want our children to have. And this is a unique opportunity for us to start talking to them about how we treat each other, how we acknowledge and respect our differences. It's a time to talk about tolerance and diversity. And it's a time to teach our children what it means to be model citizens in a democratic society where you have a right to use your voice, you have a right to use the power of your right to vote, and where the Constitution is supposed to apply to all of its citizens. And where we find those breaches, where we find that there are organizations, whether it's police organizations or institutions of higher learning or businesses, any organization that compromises the inalienable rights that we all have, we have an obligation to take a stand and make sure that our rights are indeed protected. We should also say that we have a phenomenal police department in Mount Vernon. Our SROs have been exceptional. They have developed relationships with our students and partnerships with our district. And I do not want to see our community turn against our police officers who have stood at the ready to come to our aid and defend our students, defend our district, defend our community. So it's important that, to the extent that people may choose to protest, or to the extent that people may choose to express their frustration, they do so in a manner that is respectful of the people who are there to protect and serve, and have done so in our community with dignity. And if we should ever experience the contrary, we should talk about how we come together as a community and address that. So that's what I would like to share with you relative to my position as the superintendent of schools on the George Floyd matter. I do encourage our teachers to have conversations with students about their thoughts and feelings. This is on the heels of COVID-19, which is still alive and well in Mount Vernon. And our kids have a lot to digest right now. So let's embrace them. Let's give them the opportunity to ask questions, express their thoughts and feelings, and help them make sense of all of this chaos and talk about their fears in a safe place. I'd like to also make another statement relative to where we are with elections in Mount Vernon. The school district is an apolitical organization, and as such, we do not support or endorse any candidates for positions for the Mount Vernon Board of Trustees. I certainly wish every candidate well in their campaigns and look forward to working with whoever is elected as we continue to transform our school district and fully implement the 2020 vision. Again, I wish them all the best. This is a unique environment for elections right now across the country. So I just felt it necessary to put that disclaimer out there because we know that the vote is being done by ballot this year, and we've taken all the necessary precautions to ensure that those ballots are secure and protected. And to the extent that we have any control over any breaches, we've taken the necessary precautions to make sure that that does not happen. And speaking of ballots, we expect that the ballots will be in your homes by the 4th. And I want to remind you that they must be returned by 5 p.m. on Tuesday, June 9th. Now, I understand there is some talk about perhaps changing that date, but we have no official notification of that. So we are still operating under the governor's most recent executive order that those ballots must be returned by June 9th at 5 o'clock p.m. So you must mail them immediately. You can't wait and mail them the day before. They have to be in the mail as soon as possible. If you are not able to get to the mail, there is a drop box located at the Ed Center. It's on the main entrance at 165 North Columbus Avenue, and that box is available 24/7. It is in the vestibule of the main entrance, and it will be there until 5 p.m. on Tuesday. And there are security cameras monitoring the activity to make sure there are no breaches. Make sure you seal your completed ballot in an oath envelope and sign it, and ballots will not be counted without signature. The regulations require that all ballots be signed. Now on graduation, I've been getting a lot of calls about graduations. And if you have any questions, you can start posting them. We have some people who have sent questions in already, and we'll try to get to those as well. But the graduation right now is scheduled for June 20th. And we have an extraordinary committee that's in place who has put together some recommendations, which I have accepted in its entirety. And both Thornton and Mount Vernon High will have their graduations on Saturday, June 20th. There will be a virtual graduation in the morning and a drive-through diploma pickup in the afternoon, and there will be a citywide salute to all of our graduates at 5 p.m. on Saturday. Now, the middle schools and elementary school moving up ceremonies are being conducted at the building level. So I don't have any specific details on how principals are doing that right now, but you should reach out to your building principal and get further information about how they are managing their preschool, their kindergarten, their 6th grade and 8th grade moving up ceremonies. The other question I've been getting is relative to locker clean out and desk clean out and students being able to pick up the rest of their personal belongings. We are still working out the details on this. Last week, the teachers came in and cleaned out their classrooms. I understand that there are some students who may be moving, and to the extent that you need to get those materials before we come out with our schedule, you can contact your building principal and he or she can make arrangements for you to do so. In the meantime, we will be putting together a schedule that would allow for students to come and gather their personal belongings, and we'll give you more details about that. That will likely begin at some point midweek next week or the following week. We're trying to get through the election and ballot counting so that we can spend some time putting that protocol in place. We have also sent out information about our rezoning plan. We've been talking about rezoning the district now for about 2 years. We've given parents ample notice that this is likely to happen, and we are now ready to move forward with the rezoning plan and the opening of our new elementary school, which is the Mandela Zalakafra School at Columbus Circle. So we are going to be notifying parents specifically. All parents who were potentially notified have gotten their letters, and we have now fine-tuned that. On our district website, we have updated the software, so if you are potentially impacted by that move, you can put your address in and it will tell you if you are slated to go to the new school. But schools that are potentially impacted include students at Columbus, Hamilton, Lincoln, some students at Edward Williams, Rebecca Turner students, 4th grade students will be becoming 5th graders next year. They will remain on the Turner campus, but they will be attending the Benjamin Turner building. Those parents have also been notified. But again, go to our district website, put in your address, and it will tell you what your new school allocation will be. We have already staffed that building, and teachers will soon get their class lists, and you will be able to find out who your teachers will be for September 2020. We do not know what September will look like relative to whether or not we will be back in school or in a distance learning environment. We are planning for both. The governor's executive order has so far not given us any specific direction. So obviously we are putting a plan together that addresses the possibility of us having either a in-school program, a distance learning program, or some hybrid where there's a combination of both. In any event, what we do know is that whatever we do, we will have to make provisions for social distancing. And of course, you know, children are not always going to abide by that. So we have to be sure that we have protocols and procedures in place to make certain that social distancing is occurring for our students, to keep them safe and to keep our staff safe. Laptop distribution and collection. We will begin our laptop collection process for our graduating seniors. This is being coordinated now at the individual buildings. Please look out for more information on that. But we will certainly be collecting laptops from our graduating seniors, and those laptops will have to be collected prior to graduation. Students will not be given their diploma if they have a laptop in their possession that they have not turned in. Those 8th grade students who are graduating will be getting similar notification of what that collection process will be. We are trying to make certain that all of our students who will be enrolled in our summer program will have a device. So that's why we need to collect those devices from students that are graduating and or leaving our districts. Central office will be reopening on Monday, June 8th. The building will be open from 8 to 4. Staff members are working on a modified schedule. So in order to maintain social distancing and keep our building capacity within the confines outlined in the governor's executive order, staff members will be working a flex schedule, meaning that some staff members will be in one day, some staff members on the next day. All visitors will be required to have an appointment before coming to the building. So please do not just show up at the building. You will not be given access without an appointment, because we need to control the number of people who are in the building at any given time. All employees must wear face coverings. All visitors must wear face coverings. So beginning Monday, if you need to come to the central office building, please make an appointment, call the respective office and make an appointment with whoever you need to see. They will schedule you. The only entrance open will be the entrance in the parking lot area of the building. The front entrance will not be available for accessing the building. So please pay attention and abide by these parameters for everyone's safeties. Our summer school digital program, those packets are being prepared. Our students are working on putting their summer programs together. We've identified our summer school staff, and our summer school students should begin to get their information as well. And as soon as we get those class rosters together, we will be notifying everyone and letting them know where we are relative to getting our program up and running. But we're excited about having our kids come back to school and interact with their teachers. And while the program will be a distance learning program, it will be one where it is synchronized, meaning students will interact and engage with their teachers on a very consistent basis. So they'll be able to see their classmates in their virtual environment. They'll be able to interact with their teacher and have activities that are meaningful and engaging. And we are also going to continue our daycare program for essential workers. Our essential workers have all received their notification about the program. Shout out to Dr. Gail White-Wallace for her extraordinary leadership with running that program during this very turbulent time. We have had a very successful program for our essential workers, and I want to take this opportunity to thank all of our essential workers for their service, all of our nurses, our food service workers, manufacturers, truckers, transportation folks, people working in the medical environment. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We still have a lot of cases in Mount Vernon, Westchester County in particular. So we have to be careful that we don't let our guard down. I know the weather is getting nice and people are more prone to try to rush back into some normalcy. But please remember that even though numbers are going down in a lot of places, numbers are still very, very high in Mount Vernon. So I ask that you please remember social distancing, remember to wear your face mask, remember to wash your hands. We will be sanitizing central office on a daily basis. We will make certain that our buildings are clean, and we want to make our community safe as possible. So normally we would take more questions live, and because we have so many pre-prepared, I'm not sure how many of those live questions we'll get to, but Mr. McCormick is going to moderate some of those questions for us. Our parent liaisons through the Office of School Improvement and Dr. BC, Dr. Bennett Conroy, have been working to make sure our parents get information out for this fireside chat. So these fireside chats, we would normally go out and do what we call our road show to talk about the budget and ask questions. And since we are not able to do that, we are now doing this in this virtual environment, and parents have submitted questions in advance through their parent liaisons about whatever it is they want to talk about. So we're here this evening to provide you with more information, or as much as we can, provide some clarity, provide some normalcy, and to help allay any concerns that you may have and answer any questions that may hopefully put you in a more comfortable position as we navigate COVID-19 and the protests happening in and around our communities. All right, Mr. McCormick, what do you have for us?
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Hamilton. Our first question this evening, it relates to our budget. There was prior mention of the City of Mount Vernon owing or delaying payments to the Mount Vernon City School District. Has that been resolved? And if so, how is that being handled?
Great question. So the district will begin collecting its own taxes beginning July 1st. And the reason we are doing this is because the city has not remitted all of the tax payments it has received, and consequently, the district is lagging behind in its revenue. So while our expenses have not been reduced, our revenue is not flowing on a consistent basis because the city has not been forwarding those payments to us in a timely fashion. To date, they still have money that is due to us. And I'm gonna have Mr. Silver talk about that momentarily. But July 1st, the district will begin collecting its own taxes. Your payments will be remitted to the Ed Center. You can look for your bills to come at the end of June, and I ask that you pay particular attention to where your payments are going. Obviously, if you pay your payments through your mortgage company, you will continue to do that. But if you pay your taxes separately, you will need to pay them to the school district. A postcard with additional information is also forthcoming to give you more direction on that. But Mr. Silver, if you could talk about the status of the tax collection with the city for whoever posed that question.
Thank you, Dr. Hamilton. We estimate right now that there's about $35 million owed to us, and that includes money for last year, money for the year before, money for the library, interest and penalties, and current year's monies. We are struggling without some of this money. The city just gave us a few $1 million last Friday, but there is a great deal of money that is missing, more than ever before at this time of year. And we don't know if we're going to have enough cash to make it through the end of June right now without substantial further payments from the city. We now have to collect the library taxes, and we have to make the library whole in the same year as the taxes are collected, even if they're not all collected. The city has 2 years to make us whole. So even though we're going to be collecting our taxes starting July 1st, the city is still responsible to collect taxes that are not paid or that are in arrears and remit them to us. At this time, I do not have a breakdown of the monies that are owed to us. The city has not given us detail of what they have collected, what it's for, what year it represents. And our auditors last year had to just estimate all of those payments and applications. Bottom line is, there's a lot of money outstanding, and at least when we collect our own taxes, we will have whatever we collect. Dr. Hamilton.
Thank you. I would encourage you to write letters, reach out to your city council people and let them know that by not forwarding those payments to us, you're putting the school district in a bind. And we don't want this to become litigious. That only costs everybody more money. But the city has a responsibility to turn that money over to us. And we're consistently asking that they direct the comptroller to do so.
While we're talking about funds, Dr. Hamilton, can we touch upon if the district got any money from the federal government as part of their stimulus packages?
We have not received any additional funds relative to a stimulus packet to date. In fact, it is probable that we will have a reduction in our state aid. The governor has been consistently talking about the crisis that the state is in. And if the federal government does not come to the rescue of the state, then the governor will obviously be looking to reduce allocations already provided to school districts and municipalities and other entities. And we stand to lose a substantial amount of money if the governor does cut state funding. Mount Vernon receives a very large portion of its budget from the state aid. And if we are forced to have this reduction, we will really be in a bind because we rely so heavily. And I want to say that this budget that is being presented to you this year, again, we are going out and not increasing taxes on the local school levy. This is monumental. No other school district has been able to do that. And I have to tell you very candidly, when we started this budget process, we thought that we would need to go out with a slight tax increase because we have been holding steady for the last 6 years. And after the pandemic hit, we just felt we could not in good conscience go out and ask a community where so many people were unemployed or underemployed and businesses were closed to raise school taxes. So we are very proud to report that we are presenting a budget to the community that has a 0% tax levy increase again for the 7th time since I've been in the district.
Dr. Hamilton, can you speak a little bit about how our budget was created, the process that has been used?
So we do a zero-based budgeting process, which essentially means there are some fixed costs that get carried over. For instance, we have to pay a charter school. We have costs like every other family. We have health insurance contributions we have to make and pension contributions that we have to make. So those are fixed costs. Everything else gets calculated into the budget based on its relevance and application to meeting the board goals. So it starts out with a budget defense round process where principals and department leaders submit their budgets and they come in and talk about what they need in their budgets and why. And we usually make modifications at that juncture and principals come back with a revised budget. And then there's a budget committee that looks at the budget and helps establish what some of those priorities are. And that committee is comprised of 2 of our citizens, Mr. Rick Powers, board members, President Arlene Torres and Melissa Munoz, and Mr. Tom Keller is also one of our citizens who serve on this committee. And they spend hours all year long looking at costs and looking for efficiencies and setting parameters and philosophies around how we create the budget. Then the budget is presented to the board after many, many different modifications and variations. And finally, the board adopts the budget. Then there's a public hearing on the budget, which happened last night. And that's where the budget is presented to the public, and you have your opportunity to ask questions. And then we go out and ask the community to support the budget. And that's where we are in this process now.
Are there opportunities for members of the public to become involved in the budget process? And if so, how?
Absolutely. The board is always looking for people to be a part of the budget process. They can reach out to Mr. Silver. You can find him at ksilver@mtvernoncsd.org or call at 914-665-5200, and they will forward you to Mr. Silver.
I know you spoke a little bit about a reduction in state aid, but could you elaborate on what state aid is and if a reduction in state aid next year will cause an increase on property taxes?
That's a great question. It's not likely to cause an increase on state taxes, on school taxes. What will likely happen if we have a cut in state aid is that we will have to go in and cut programs accordingly. So if we have a 10% reduction in state aid, for instance, we will need to go in and cut the budget by that amount. So 10% in state aid, Mr. Silver would know the exact numbers better than I. What would 10% be hypothetically?
$7.5 million.
So if we got a 10% reduction in our state aid, we would lose about $7.5 million. And we are currently working on possible scenarios in the event that we are forced to do that. So we're not caught at the last minute scurrying about trying to meet the demands of reducing our budget. Hopefully that won't happen. It is probable that it will. So we are preparing for as much as a 20% reduction in our budget.
So as we're looking at these budget reductions, Dr. Hamilton and Mr. Silver, can we talk a little bit about what programs may be impacted by reductions? And while we're on that, how will any reductions in state aid impact the opening of the new Mandela building?
Fortunately, we have been able to staff that Mandela building without any significant budgetary implications. Of course, we got to put in smart boards and outfit the building with technology, some of which is actually covered in the bond. But in terms of additional staffing, there is no significant costs associated with that because we have been able, through our retirements and some other efficiency, staff that building accordingly. If we have a significant reduction in aid, we'll have to go in our budget and look at where we're going to make some reductions. But I can tell you, if we have to cut $7 million, $8 million, $9 million, $10 million, $15 million in our budget, Mount Vernon is going to be a very different place. This is why we have been asking our community to really write letters and be a part of the advocacy initiative to get our state officials to understand how important it is for them to leave us intact. Because when we came into the district, we were already behind the 8 ball. We did not have guidance counselors at the elementary level. We didn't have nurses at the elementary level. Some of our programs just did not exist. Some of the offerings in our high schools, programs have been decimated. Our swimming pool was closed. Our CTE courses were decimated. So we've added all that stuff back in over the last 6 to 7 years. And we want to keep that because now our children are having the kinds of experiences that are getting them into Ivy League colleges. They're getting scholarships. They're being competitive with students in surrounding communities like Bronxville and White Plains and other communities that heretofore our students did not have the same kind of opportunities that those students did. But we'll be looking at the budget in broad strokes at that point. We'll be looking at whether or not we continue to offer some of the sports programs, whether or not we can continue to offer some of the after-school programs, whether or not we can keep our class sizes as small as they are. We may have to increase class size with that kind of reduction. And unfortunately, that will mean that we will lose some of our dedicated staff members to provide services to our students on a daily basis.
Dr. Hamilton, I'm watching the Facebook feed and some questions are coming in. And while we have our prepared ones, I thought we might go here. Can you once again just touch upon why we needed to reconfigure the district lines? And in terms of, there were some children who are being impacted more than once by a district reconfiguration. How are we dealing?
Well, we really tried to make sure that that did not happen, that kids were not impacted twice, or that any family was not impacted twice. But the reason we are opening this new school or reconfiguring the district is, first of all, it was part of the 2020 vision. And the community was very clear about some of the things that they wanted and expected when they approved that bond in 2016. One of which was neighborhood schools. The other was about implementing an initiative for full day pre-K, which was a big initiative. It saved our parents thousands of dollars a year because they were sending kids to private daycare programs where they were not getting full instructional activities, and parents were paying out of pocket for that. And by offering full day pre-K, our parents, not only is it free, we are seeing our students grow in leaps and bounds academically. But we also had overcrowding situations in our elementary schools. We had classrooms that were taking place on the stage, in the library that wasn't designed for instructional space. We started creating small classrooms in the hallways because we just ran out of space. And there is new construction going on in Mount Vernon. And we know that these new buildings are likely to generate somewhere between 100 and 220 students over the next few years. So we needed to alleviate some of the pressure on our building capacity by bringing in this new school. And obviously that means that some students will be impacted from their current schools because we need to get them out of those less than ideal spaces. We have students over at Traphagen that are in trailers, and we're paying an extraordinary fee for those trailers, and we'd like to take those offline as well.
Thank you. Dr. Hamilton, can you touch, there's questions coming in about budget cuts in terms of how it might impact the gifted and talented program, how it might impact sports, and how it might impact teaching positions throughout the district. I know that's a lot, but it's all.
Well, and I will tell you, there hasn't been any decisions made specifically about what programs will be cut or what staff members will be impacted. We're just now looking at various scenarios as recently as last night. We talked about what might happen if we're in that situation, but there has not been any decision made about which programs will be cut or reduced or eliminated. But everything is on the table. And one of the things that I know will happen, having lived through this in previous districts, is everything becomes sacred at that point. So let's just talk about gifted and talented. Well, there will be some people that say, well, that only serves a handful of kids. That only serves 100 kids. Maybe we don't need that. But to parents who rely on that program, for example, that's a big deal. And they don't want to sacrifice that. And you may have somebody else that will say, well, why do we need art and music when we know that our art and music program is quite robust and has created extraordinary opportunities for our students? Somebody else may not think we need football, or maybe we don't need soccer. So all these things will be on the table for reconsideration if we have those kinds of cuts, and they will be broad and across the district. I venture to say if we have a 20% reduction in state aid, probably every program will be hit at some point.
All right, we're going to move on, Dr. Hamilton. Let's talk a little bit about the upcoming trustee election and budget vote. I know a lot of people haven't received their ballots yet. Can you elaborate on what's going on with the ballots?
We've been getting a lot of information about what's going on with ballots and a lot of questions. And you have to understand that the school district is just a liaison. We just have to follow the parameters set forth by the governor in his executive order. But we have certainly been advocating for this time crunch that we're in, not just Mount Vernon, but all school districts relative to getting those ballots in the mailboxes and getting them back in ample time. There are considerable delays. The printers have been inundated by printing these ballots for all school districts across the state. They've been backlogged to the point that we were expecting them as long ago as last weekend, and they aren't here yet. Mr. Silver had conversations right before we got on this call. Literally 2 minutes before I got on this call, Mr. Silver gave me an update, and I'll ask him to share that information with you in terms of the number of school districts that are still awaiting their ballots. Mr. Silver?
So our representative in Albany with our Big Five membership told me just before we went on the air that there are between some 30 and 70 school districts that have not received their ballots, including right here, Brewster, New Rochelle, and Mahopac. And that there is great concern on the part of the governor's office that if these people don't get their ballots, there's no way they'll be able to get them back to us on Tuesday, short of delivering all the ballots by hand. So we sent out 39,000 ballots to every registered voter, every eligible voter in the city, and they have not yet been delivered. So the governor is considering several things. One is that they can be mailed back and postmarked instead of being in our hands on the 9th, being postmarked on the 9th. They are also considering delaying the whole thing for a week, but we don't have any confirmation whatsoever of that, only that this is on the table and that the governor is very concerned about disenfranchisement of voters. And our people in Albany did make that very clear about the Mount Vernon voters not having their ballots in time to give a thoughtful response and get their ballots back to us.
But until that happens, we are operating under the most recent executive order that ballots must be in by 5 o'clock on Tuesday, June 9th. And if that changes, we will update you as quickly as possible.
Dr. Hamilton, while we're on this, has the school district been in touch with anybody advocate to the governor's office for these changes? What have we done on our end?
We're part of it's essentially a lobbying group, and it's called the Big Five, and we became a part of the Big Five about 2 years ago. So we are affiliate members of the Big Five. And this is a very powerful organization. They have direct access to the governor, the budget and finance committees, senators, legislators, people who make decisions about state funding. And the Big Five is comprised of districts that are heavily reliant on state aid and have significant issues in terms of their demography, their demographics, and their geography, and their ability and capacity to provide a fair and equitable education for all students. So through that group, they have been lobbying for us to talk about the circumstances around funding and the concerns about these ballots not being delivered in time, and advocating on our behalf to the governor to make some changes in the executive order to make provisions for the fact that voters still don't have these ballots.
Thank you, Dr. Hamilton. Let's pivot a little bit over to some of our educational programs. We've been in a distance learning mode since the middle of March. We've given out a number of laptops. Are there plans for the district to distribute more devices in the coming weeks for the summer program? And then just to piggyback on that, what is our distance learning plan for devices come September?
Well, we are working on a plan that assumes that we will likely have some kind of hybrid program. The benefit that Mount Vernon has is Dr. Gorman and I have worked in this kind of initiative before, and I'm going to pivot to him to expand on this. But fortunately, we had some experience with deployment and moving to a one-to-one digital device for a district that we worked in together before. So we were a little ahead of the curve, even when we submitted our plans to the state, which we had very little time to do, by the way. The state even acknowledged that our planning and professional development was superior to other districts. Dr. Gorman?
Good evening, Dr. Hamilton. Thank you.
Good evening.
So yes, the plan is to continue to get as many devices as we can for kids. I know I talked to Dr. Mena-Conroy today, Dr. Hamilton, and she had mentioned that we are receiving close to 300 devices from the state, from a state grant, probably next week. And I know the Mount Vernon Ed Foundation has been championing an effort to continue to get more devices in kids' hands. We know that this is an imperative for learning, regardless of whether we were in a pandemic or not. And this pandemic is actually giving us a chance to actualize that and put it at a higher priority to get these devices into kids' hands. And we hope that we've had some really positive experiences for the kids. Next week, Dr. Hamilton, I know the district is going out and we're going to have a mental wellness week. And it's from June 8th to 12th on social and emotional learning. And I know that the schools are really gearing up for that. But to get back to your original question, Mr. McCormick, we do plan on giving out more laptops in the summer for summer school. We plan on expanding our efforts even beyond what we did this year in the summer in a combination of synchronous and asynchronous and some innovative protocols for our kids. And we're hoping it's a great chance for kids to catch up and to get on track and to even be where they need to be come August. And one of the things that we want to always emphasize is we want to try to engage kids at a high level. We know that it's hard sitting in front of a computer. And so we're trying to use videos and projects and different types of strategies to really engage kids, to keep them in the process and really make connections to the world that we're living in.
And I really want to take an opportunity to thank everyone who has either donated to the Mount Vernon Education Foundation, and if you haven't, you have an opportunity to do so. They have made a commitment to continue to increase our laptop inventory, and they're looking to fund other programs and initiatives in the district as well. I also want to thank our PTA. They have also made contributions for laptops for our students. And we're continuing to increase our inventory. We would love to get to the point where we have a device for every student in our district. And because we have almost 8,000 students in our district, that's got a healthy price tag on it. And laptops have to be refreshed periodically too. They don't last forever. So it's a huge commitment, but we're working on getting to the point where students who need a device will be able to have one.
Does the district have an idea on how the budget will be impacted come September if social distancing regulations are still in place and we have to have a staggered schedule, or we have to come up with some kind of modified program for students? How is that going to impact our budget?
Well, there's some savings that we've actualized because of the pandemic. Some expenses have decreased, but there are some other expenses that have increased. So far in our current environment, it's been kind of like a wash. So we're in a pretty good position as far as that goes. If we are, in fact, in a virtual environment or a hybrid environment, which includes some kind of virtual learning, I don't anticipate there will be any additional costs other than our students who have, students with disabilities who have related services. We have to figure out a way to make certain that those students get those services. And that may have an additional expense on it because some of those services cannot be provided through a virtual environment. So we'll have to figure that out. And we're working on what that will look like. We're studying models across the country. Other states are working on plans for September. We're working on plans for September. And we're taking pieces from here and pieces from there and trying to find what will work best in our community. But from a budgetary impact, I don't anticipate there will be any significant implications.
You just mentioned our special education program and our special education students. How does this year's budget impact those students in special ed?
The only thing that we've done relative to special education is we took a very good look, a very close look at transportation. And that's been something we've been working on, frankly, for about the last 3 years. All other services remain intact. But there are some students who have been getting transportation from door to door, and their disability is at a point now where they may be able to, we can have local pickups in certain areas of the town to save on some of that transportation costs. So we have reduced some expenses in that regard. But other than that, all other special ed costs have remained intact. And students will get all the programs and services that they need and or require.
Will our special ed students still have access to their teacher assistants and paraprofessionals as required by their IEPs?
Absolutely. If we have a reduction in the staffing because we get hit with 20%, we'll have to look at how we reallocate some of our TAs, frankly. I don't know what that will look like. And if a student has a one-on-one, one-to-one in their IEP, if that IEP is not modified, then we'll be required to provide that. But there are other students who have IEPs that are kind of gratuitous, that have one-on-ones that are gratuitous in nature, and we may look to cut back on those. But if it is mandated in an IEP and that IEP is not modified to change that, then that student will absolutely get it.
So as we've been digitally learning since the middle of March, there's probably some students out there who didn't receive some related services. Will there be compensating services offered to those students and their families?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we are looking now at how we make up those missed hours. The state is going to be coming out with some changes that hold school districts harmless if they were not able to provide all the services in that environment because of the distance learning and COVID-19. But right now we're in a plan until that edict comes through. We're planning to make up those services. I know our special ed department is scheduling students now who need speech or counseling services or OT or PT. We're making up those hours now.
As we're talking about special ed again, what budget cuts affect service? I'm sorry. How will services that were unable to be offered affect the budget? So students didn't receive some services this year. Does that mean there will be an increased cost in next year's school budget to make that up?
I understand you. No, because we didn't expend that money this year on services that students were required to get. Those funds have been earmarked or encumbered to cover the cost of those services moving forward.
Somebody asked about summer school. Just touch on that again. We had some people joining us late. We have over 220 people on our Facebook Live right now paying attention.
Wow.
So we have a audience.
Summer school, we're increasing our summer school enrollment. All schools will have summer school this year. And the reason we're increasing our enrollment, obviously, is because we're concerned that some students may have had some slippage during the pandemic. So we want to make sure we give them an opportunity to get caught up. So we are almost doubling the number of students in many of our buildings that we've normally had in our summer programs.
New student registration and kindergarten registration are always hot topics in Mount Vernon. Much more so this year than usual because we're getting a late start because we were closed. Can you go over the registration process that we have in place?
Yes, we are really trying to do something a little different. If I had to make a list of all the complaints I get, registration is probably number one on the list. It is very time consuming, it's arduous, people get frustrated. Oftentimes they don't know what documents they need to bring with them. So let me just share this information. Registration for this year will begin on July 8th and will run through August 27th, Monday through Thursdays. There will be a new registration form, which will be found on the district website under registration beginning the 8th of July. You'll be able to complete this information online, and your completed registration checklist requires that all of your documents must accompany your application. Incomplete packages will not be processed. So it's important that when you click on that tab and you look at the documents that you have to have, that you complete all of that information and have all of your documents. Attach the registration checklist to the registration form and submit it. You can bring the form in by mail or drop it off or by email. And there is a contact person on that. That's Dr. Kim Smith. And this information will be on the website if you want to mail it. Her address will be there. And her phone number is 914-358 2380. That's 914-358-2380. But for the first time, we are looking to do this online. You will need residency documents, proof of age, birth certificate, immunization records, special ed records if applicable. You'll have to have a valid photo ID for the parent or guardian. So auntie can't bring you if she's not your legal guardian. She can't register you if she's not your legal guardian. You will need one of the following documents: either a current mortgage statement, property tax bill, a current lease, or an affidavit from a landlord. Two of the following: a current pay stub, tax form, utility bill, membership document like a library card, for example, with the library logo on it, voter registration document, state or government issue ID. All this information is on the district website. We need you to make this online process a success. Otherwise, we'll have to revert back to the old way, which nobody likes. So please look on the website, pay attention to all the information that's on there. And again, you can email it, send it in by US mail, or drop it off at the central office.
Thank you. Dr. Hamilton, when you and Dr. Gorman joined the district, I believe you talked about a one-to-one initiative you brought to your previous school district together. What would it take to bring a one-to-one initiative to Mount Vernon? And is that something that we're looking to move towards?
We've been having this debate, Dr. Gorman and I, about our readiness as a community to move to a one-on-one initiative. And one of the things that I think we have learned from this COVID situation is that we're probably more ready than I thought we were. Dr. Gorman, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Dr. Hamilton, I just think we've been networking throughout the United States and even the world with our best practices. And as we raise the bar, I'm seeing kids really rise to those occasions. I think before the pandemic, we said technology, how important it was, because our students are going to be having jobs that they don't even know exist yet. Through what we've gone through now, and there has to be an obligation or an imperative. It has gone right up the ladder. And one of the things that I really like that I've seen from teachers, administrators, and students is that technology always doesn't work right. So when you work around, you're actually critically thinking, and you're becoming innovative, and your creativity, and you're collaborating with peers. And we've had meetings virtually that have been much more productive in a lot of ways than our physical meetings. Yeah, so I don't see how we couldn't set that standard. And we are 20 years into the 21st century already. In a lot of ways than our physical meetings. Yeah, so I don't see how we couldn't set that standard. And we are 20 years into the 21st century already. In a lot of ways than our physical meetings. Yeah, so I don't see how we couldn't set that standard. And we are 20 years into the 21st century already.
That was me. Don't panic.
Dr. Hamilton, so far 2020 has brought us COVID-19. It has brought us the murder of several people in the African-American community. We have seen rioting, looting, protests. This is a lot for children of any age, but especially our younger children, to absorb and process. What is the school district doing, or what could we do to help with the social and emotional needs of our students as they're processing these unheard of events even 6 months ago?
Well, that's why I was very adamant about implementing mental wellness next week, because I know I've been talking to students. We have students in the superintendent's advisory group, so I have an opportunity to really talk to students on a one-on-one basis. Students have been inviting me to Zoom groups that they've had on their own just to have conversations about their experiences. And I got to be very, very concerned about how they have been almost numb to what they are seeing around them. And that was very concerning to me, because Our students should not normalize death. They should not normalize violence. They should not be so used to seeing acts of violence that they're numb to it. So that's why I said we are going to kind of step back a little bit next week and give our students an opportunity to talk through this. Now, our teachers are not clinicians, they're not psychologists or psychiatrists, but they do have a skill set to help students process and understand information. And so that's what next week is devoted to. As a school district, we are following the state character ed curriculum. We're looking at pillars of character ed and having conversations with students in the context of COVID-19, in the context of George Floyd, and in the context of all the other senseless acts of violence they've seen committed against people of color, and how to protect themselves and how to function as people of color in a society that heretofore has not been very favorable to African Americans, and to talk about what that means for them and to help them understand that all police are not bad. There's a very, very small percentage of police who have misused their authority, and all white people are not racist. There's a very, very small percentage of white people who have been part of disenfranchising people of color. So our children need to understand that so they don't have these broad stroke opinions about people or police or what it means to be Black in America. Our kids have to unpack that.
Thank you, Dr. Hamilton, for addressing that. Dr. Gorman, this is your priority, not priority. Can you talk a little bit about the AVID program and how the AVID program is impacting our students and what the plans are for AVID moving forward?
So I'm really excited that AVID has met the challenge of this digital environment. They are providing a 3-day virtual summer institute, really focusing in on digital tools and how they work and fit in with college and career readiness. And I'll do one better, Mr. McCormick. We are actually sending a leadership team from every school to that virtual conference. We are incredibly excited about it. And what they're doing differently this year is, in addition to that 3-day conference virtually, they are also putting together a community of practice for the entire year. So we will have a virtual professional learning community for AVID. We are also excited, like we mentioned before, Dr. Hamilton, of some things might work even better in a virtual world, like having college tutors and doing the tutorology with our kids in breakout rooms through synchronous instruction. AVID is a full go. We are moving ahead, and we are excited about making sure we hit that curriculum in a rigorous way. Here's the best thing about AVID that Dr. Hamilton, knows more than anyone. At the secondary level, AVID can be a home for kids. Their teachers become mama and papa bears and really take care of them, and it becomes a family. The AVID for social, emotional, and connections in this time is very powerful. And we've talked to the elective teachers, and they've said the commitment to the kids and just looking out for them is very powerful, because that's a practice that usually doesn't happen when they get to secondary education.
That's one of the things I've always liked about AVID. I became familiar with AVID, I guess, about 12 years ago, 13 years ago.
Longer, and I think you're starting to date yourself, Dr. Hamilton.
Yeah, I think so. Oh, wow. But I've been very impressed with the tenets of AVID and how it impacts students, particularly those middle of the road students, those youngsters who with some advocacy and additional supports and services become your high flyers. And the relationships that they build with the caring adults, it's so closely aligned with research that comes right out of Harvard about children being able to, it's the Tripod project that looks at content, pedagogy, and relationships by Dr. Ferguson. And I don't want to get too deep, but the relationships are so important for our students when they're middle of the road and they need somebody to teach them how to be organized, teach them how to ask the right questions, teach them how to take notes and use those notes as their own study guides, and to have somebody that forces them into being more responsible for their own learning is one of the most wonderful things about AVID that I'm so glad has taken root here in Mount Vernon as well.
Dr. Gorman, going back to you for 1 second, can you just touch for a second on teacher accountability while digital learning? What are we doing to ensure that our teachers are actively engaged with our students and they're living up to what they're supposed to be doing in the classrooms?
So that's a really great question, Mr. McCormick. One of the things that we like a lot about a digital environment is that we could actually visit and touch our teachers better than we ever had before. We have continuous meetings with our administrators on a weekly basis, and they're all together. So, when I go visit buildings, sometimes it would be challenging because of the daily operations to get everyone in one place. We've been really good at that moving forward. But the accountability piece, teachers have created their own folders of lessons and assignments in Schoology. And so their course actually lives in our learning management system. The system of accountability is equivalent to what we would see in a school year in a traditional classroom, but even more so. I could jump in right now on any teacher's classroom and look at their lessons right now. So we will sure get advice from the state on what APPR looks like next year in teacher supervision and observation and evaluation. But our principals and our administrators have been steadfast on checking in with teachers and having that accountability. Moving forward next year, I think we'll have a more of a solid structure and schedule for the school day if we're in a virtual environment.
Thank you, Dr. Gorman. Dr. Hamilton, I'd be remiss, our school board trustee, Warren Mitchell, is on the feed, and he just mentioned to us that there are a lot of people who joined the Facebook live chat a little late in the hour, and there's a number of questions coming in regarding rezoning. Can you just touch on it one more time on why we're doing it and why it's so critical right now for these students?
So, when the community had expressed their concerns about overcrowding elementary schools and not wanting 30 kids in a classroom. So we started putting classrooms in spaces that were not designed to be classrooms, in the hallways, on the stage, in the libraries. And the onboarding of the new elementary school is designed specifically to address those issues. So the trade-off in not having 30 kids in the classroom is rezoning the district. We also know that there's new construction in Mount Vernon, and we anticipate that building two of those buildings in particular, will bring from 1 to in excess of 200 students into our community. So we have to plan for that. It would be irresponsible if we did not. So consequently, we are redistricting the district to make allocations for students to be educated in classrooms that are designed for instruction. And that will mean that the trailers at Traphagen will come off inventory. They're energy hogs, they're expensive to operate. We also know that there are classrooms at Edward Williams and at Traphagen that are in the hallways and these small cubbies that we've created to educate our children. So that's why we're rezoning. There is a purpose behind rezoning. And I know people are uncomfortable with the thought of moving their kids to another school, but there's really no way around this. I mean, we either have to make the compromise and move students into the new building, or our class sizes increase, and then we risk quality instruction. So I'm hoping that our community will be understanding of that, those that are going to be impacted. Again, we've been talking about this for 2 years now, and we've been trying to give people heads up that this is coming. But this is our reality. We want to keep class sizes at an operable number, and we want to get students out of the hallways and off the stage and get our media centers back to being places for research and not where classes are contained all day long and limiting the opportunities that students have for access.
Thank you, Dr. Hamilton. And just to follow up on the rezoning question, we're opening the Mandela building, which is right over here on Gramerton. Why are children from across the district being impacted by this redistricting and not just those in the immediate vicinity?
The other part of that, and thank you for feeding me that too. The other part of that is we're creating neighborhood schools. So our schools will be K-8 buildings, and kids will not have to transfer for those middle years. And that's what the community told us they wanted. They wanted their students to be able to stay in their buildings. And that's what the research says. Students do better. There's greater continuity of care when students are in their own neighborhood for their elementary and middle school experience instead of transitioning from one building to the next and then on to a high school. And then they'll have these options for when they get ready to leave 8th grade for going into one of 3 theme-based high schools during their high school experience. Change is not always a comfortable change. I get it, I understand it, but in the long run, this is what is best for our students educationally. And you know, I've already received emails from parents asking me, do I have to go? Do I have to go? And unfortunately, if you're in that zone, you do, because if I tell one parent, no, you don't have to leave Lincoln, or no, you don't have to leave Columbus, then I have to make that concession for everybody. And then it defeats the purpose of opening the new school and the incredible investment that's been made in that building to outfit it for our students to have a quality educational center where they will get the kind of education and instruction they need and deserve.
Thank you, Dr. Hamilton. I'm looking at the time. I know everybody has things to do this evening. Do you have any final words for our community as we come to the budget vote, trustee election, schools, pandemics?
I just want to say, first of all, to our community and our teachers in particular, thank you. We have managed this COVID situation, I think, with flying colors. Hasn't been flawless. There are some growing pains and a lot of things we've learned from it, but by and large, I'm so proud of our teachers for being able to adapt so easily, and for our students getting these assignments done. In the beginning, I know kids were working all into 11 and 12 o'clock at night trying to complete assignments, and kids were emailing me and sending me messages on the district Facebook page asking for a break. And we talked to the teachers and they did that. So that kind of dissipated, and we found our balance and we found our harmony. So I'm just very proud of where we are as a district. We'll get through the pandemic, we'll get through George Floyd, and we'll get through the budget. We'll be all right. But I need everyone to just understand that we're making choices and decisions that are in the best interest of our district and the best interest of our students. And I trust that you will go out and vote on June 9th, get your ballots in time for us to hear what your thoughts are June 9th. We have made great strides with making Mount Vernon a better place. And believe you me, it is being recognized. Dr. Gorman and I was just a part of an incredible podcast with a national organization talking about our work in Mount Vernon. We're being featured in national magazines about what's going on here. And it's because of this leadership team, it's because of the board, and it's because of our incredible, committed staff members that we're able to do this. And the best is yet to come. We have a lot left to do. I have tremendous plans for the district. I think the vision moving forward is going to really make us a place to be reckoned with. And we've done a great job with accomplishing every item on that list for the 2020 vision. And we are now working on our goals for 2020 and beyond. So I just hope that you will continue to be supportive. I thank you for tuning in. I will continue to give you updates. I will continue to provide you with information that helps you make decisions for your students and for our community. Remember that the last day of school is June 17th, and we're looking forward to a much needed break. So thank you for tuning in this evening. Dr. Gorman, Mr. Silver, Mr. McCormick, thank you for your diligence, your assistance, your support as always. And to all those who make this job as wonderful as it is, to our Board of Trustees, thank you very much. Be safe and know that I am praying for you every night.